Graduation from Berklee College of Music is the culmination of a dream for many of you, and who better to speak to us of the stuff that these sweet dreams are made of than today's commencement speaker. I'll introduce you to her in greater detail in a moment, but for now, please welcome Miss and soon Dr. Annie Lennox.
Hi. Wow. Thank you so much. First of all, I'm going to say what a spectacular concert you gave last night. Utterly wonderful. The highest standard, truly. And I was very, very grateful to be a part of that. I'd like to congratulate everyone here, the graduates and professors, the graduates for coming this far so far, and the professors for guiding you all through. And while I'm on the subject, I'm going to bring in all the family members and friends and congratulate you too for being part of this wonderful celebration. So let's do this thing together. Let's all stand up and take a bow for having come this far, everybody in the whole entire hall. That's what we like. That's what we like to see, the collective spirit. You can take your time sitting down, but not too long, please. Today is a tremendous day of satisfaction and accomplishment after all the years of dedicated practice, effort, and study that you've undertaken. I hope it's been a valuable experience and you'll be able to carry with you it with you for the rest of your lives as you evolve and develop as musicians and human beings. Standing here with you, I have to say that never in my wildest dreams would I ever have imagined that on Saturday, the 11th of May, 2013, I would be the recipient of such a prestigious award as this, a doctorate from Berklee School of Music. So in the United States of America, it is almost unbelievable, and I deeply am humbled by that. Thank you so much. Thank you. So with your permission, I'd like to take a few minutes to share some of the milestones from the earlier part of my own journey in the hope that it might encourage and inspire you. My story has been completely out of the box in almost every respect. So I believe that it's important to acknowledge the value and power of unorthodoxy. It all began with a small plastic toy piano that I could pick out tunes from at the age of 3, and the fact that I loved to sing all the time. I didn't come from a privileged background. It sounds almost old-fashioned to say it, but my parents were working class. We lived in 2 small rooms in a tenement flat in Aberdeen in Scotland, and making ends meet was challenging. Looking back, I can identify 3 significant events that actually got me started. My parents realized that I had a musical ear, and by the time I was 6 or 7 years old, I was singing in a local choir every Saturday morning and having piano lessons at school with my teacher, Mrs. Edith Murray, who taught me how to read music and subsequently learn how to play the melodic lines and chordal progressions of Bach, Mozart, Mendelssohn, Beethoven, Debussy, and such like. Music lessons were an extra expense in a household where every penny counted. So I'm very grateful for the fact that my mother and father thought it important enough to cover the payment of those lessons back then. £4 a term, that was what we paid for the lessons, you see, was the equivalent of just a few dollars. But I realize now just how much that small sum contributed to my life's future trajectory. As it happened, Aberdeen had an annual music festival, and I gave my first public singing performance there in the music hall in 1961 at the age of 7. Little did I know that I would ever come to be known or recognized as a singer-songwriter. I didn't even know that such a thing was possible. Female songwriters didn't even seem to exist at that point in time. Remember Carole? At the age of 11, I was given the chance to learn how to play an old, battered silver flute. Its keys were held together with elastic bands, and on my first lesson, I tried to create a sound on it so intently that I passed out, to my utter shame, indignant embarrassment. But the instrument fascinated me so much that I persevered until I could actually produce a sustained note without fainting. When I was 17, I auditioned for the Royal Academy of Music in London, and they actually offered me a place. It was my passport to the big city and a way out of my provincial hometown. My head was full of dreams that were about to implode as soon as I stepped into the building on the first day of term, when my new flute teacher pointed out that my technique was a complete disaster. And I'd need to unlearn the way I'd been taught and relearn everything all over again. I think that was the point when I lost my love of flute playing forever and spent the next 3 years just trying to avoid classes. I realized I really didn't belong there, and the whole thing felt like a terrible mistake. So I just did as little as possible and tried to keep my head down. Needless to say, after 3 miserable years, I took the decision to drop out on the very last month of term, slipping through the back door like an embarrassment, with no idea as to what I was going to do next or where I was headed. With one heart-stopping phone call, I told my parents that I decided to leave the academy and everything was going to be just fine. That was a lie on my part, of course. I suspected, as so many young people do, that my mortified parents would never understand me. I couldn't share my dreams, my hopes, or my fears with them, as it would have further convinced them that I was dangerously unhinged and needed to be recalled back to Aberdeen as soon as possible. So that's the part of the story when the protagonist, that's me, it's 21, found herself dangling precariously on the precipice between survival or checking out of the program entirely. Get what I mean? I didn't graduate. I dropped out. Please hold that thought. There's another part to this story, you see. It runs in parallel to the first narrative, and it goes back to when I just turned 14 and was surreptitiously meeting boys and going out dancing at the local dance halls, if my father would allow it, and listening to the chart hits on my small transistor radio every morning before going to school. It has to do with the Beatles, the Kinks, and the Rolling Stones, and Dusty Springfield, and Tamla Motown, and Martha Reeves dancing in the street, and Stevie Wonder's Ma Cherie Amour, and Otis Redding's Dock of the Bay, and Marvin Gaye's Ooh, I bet you wonder how I knew about your plans to make me blue. That's what it has to do with. Except he sang it better than that, and lower down, you know. And Diana Ross and the Supremes and Smokey Robinson, and something that was happening if you were going to San Francisco, you'd have to be sure to wear some flowers in your hair, and the Beach Boys and the Mamas and Papas and psychedelia and Eastern philosophy and Procol Harum and A Whiter Shade of Pale, the first record I ever actually bought and played over and over and over and over and over again. And traffic and A Hole in My Shoe and round like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind. While the back of my head was dissolving into Fleetwood Mac's Albatross. Oh, and Glen Campbell's Wichita Lineman. I am a lineman for the county, and I drive the main road, searching in the sun for another overload. Oh my God. That song. And Aretha Franklin's The Moment I Wake Up, before I put on my makeup, I say a little prayer for you. And Carole King's, well, it's too late, baby, now it's too late. Though we really did try to make it, something inside has died, and I can't hide it, I just can't fake it. Ooh, you see where it all went? It went in here. Oh. And so much more than that, and so much more than I can ever share with you right now. The power of music in the late 60s and early 70s, remember, guys? It was like a tidal wave flooding through the medium of radio and television, saturating the heartbeats and minds of millions of teenagers in bedrooms and living rooms all across the length and breadth of the United Kingdom, with a brand new popular culture. It was vivid, colorful, cool, hip, magnetic, and compelling, and I desperately wanted to be a part of it. I realize now that my bid for self-identity was expressed through the rejection of my parents' values and the readiness to risk the leap of faith towards a totally unconventional route. Unwittingly, I was taking my first faltering steps towards the beginning of my own reinvention, steps that would gradually lead me to become the artist I ultimately wanted to be. And the moment that this all makes sense and came together was when I realized that I had to unlearn just about everything I'd been taught about music and embrace the spectacular notion that I actually was a singer-songwriter, and I was going to do my own thing in my own way. Which I sort of did. Kind of. A couple of years after I left the academy, I was working as a part-time waitress. Some of you might come to know that particular profession. In a restaurant, to support myself and trying to write songs on an old Victorian harmonium in a tiny bedsit in Camden Town when I wasn't being a waitress. And one evening, a friend introduced me to someone called Dave Stewart, my compatriot. And that was the encounter that was the beginning of a whole new series of mad adventures that would take a lot more time to recall right now, so it'll have to wait for another opportunity. So just to conclude, because I'm reaching the conclusion, guys, consider this. Wherever you think you're heading right now might turn out to take a completely different route, down a completely different path. And what looks like an ending might actually be the start of a brand new beginning. Wherever and however we find ourselves, what a privilege it is to enrich our lives through music, the incredible universal language of the soul. Enter into it wholeheartedly. Make it yours to share with the world in the very best way you can. Bon voyage, tally-ho, and steady sailing.